Starting a new hobby or creative path, especially one you dream of making a career in, takes courage, persistence, and a willingness to embrace failure. Mistakes, big or small, are where real growth happens. This reminder stayed with me from the first time I held a camera through every misstep, even to this day. But mistakes aren't just obstacles, they're powerful teachers. Reflecting on where we've stumbled allows us to stop repeating those same missteps and refine our craft. So here are some of the key mistakes I learned to let go of on my journey to becoming a better photographer. As I was writing the script of this video, I was drinking Guinness and I was debating whether I should start with one of my most impactful mistakes or save it for the end. I decided on the latter, starting small and then building up to maybe the single change that truly elevated my photography. So let's begin with one of my early pitfalls, my obsession with gear and constantly learning new techniques. When I first started out in photography, I started with a small kit with an Nikon D3200 and a kit lens. I devoured every YouTube video and every other source I could find on photography and gear, hoping that this would improve me. Thousands of bad photos later, I was convinced that the answer was better gear. So I started buying lenses, the cheapest one I could find at the time, but still, my photography wasn't improving. But I kept shooting again and again and again, and every now and then I would get this one rare good photo. I invested in more cameras, thinking that this would boost my hit rate. But despite everything, the outcome remained the same. Over time, as I kept shooting, I started getting more and more good photos. And then years into the journey, it finally hit me. The camera doesn't make the photo. I make the photo. The passion, the practice, the patience, that's what makes magic happen. I came to realize that a great photo isn't about the incredible bokeh or shooting wide open at f1.8 or f1.4. Great photography is about capturing a moment, finding order in the chaos of the streets in an instant, arranging it in the frame like it is a piece of art. But don't get me wrong, I still use shallow depth of field from time to time and I love it. But now I understand exactly why I'm using it. And it is the same about constantly underexposing my photos or expose for the highlights. Not every photo is a light pocket photo, and despite how much I love these types of shots, some photos require less contrast and more context. In the beginning, I obsessed over mastering manual exposure, constantly focusing on achieving the perfect exposure, whatever that even means. Learning everything about the exposure triangle and understand every setting of your camera is powerful and it does give you control. But at the end of the day, if a photo is a little overexposed or underexposed, or whether your depth of field is a little more or a little less, will not make or break a photo. Technical imperfections will not ruin a good photo the same way as editing will not fix a bad one. So it is okay to maybe get out of manual mode for a bit and use aperture priority instead. It is okay to give up some control to your camera and focus on the things that really matter. I used to try and control every aspect of my photography. I would plan my photo walks in advance, mapping the exact routes I would follow and packing up every piece of gear I owned. I would even go out at the set time and I would expect to get the perfect shot. In reality, all that planning and all those expectations just distracted me. I was more focused on the gear and my plan than the photography itself. Then I realized, if you want to capture a dynamic and ever-changing environment like the streets, you have to be fully immersed in it. You have to be present, you have to be ready to adapt and flow with the moment. Real photography happens in the moment, not before it. My little Rico played a significant role in helping me to make this shift. If you are interested, I covered it in the previous video, so feel free to go and check it out later. And if you're enjoying this one, hit the like button and consider subscribing. Now let's dive into the more important lessons I've learned. Letting go of obsessing over gear and techniques was only one part of the lessons I learned from my mistakes. Another part was about composition. Back when I was focused on my equipment, I didn't leave much mental space for creativity. Shooting wide open with long lenses limited my options for composition too. And that's when I discovered the value of the 28 and the 35mm lenses for street photography. These wider focal lengths forced me to think more about my framing and pushed me to learn more about the basics of composition, like the rule of thirds, for example, which at the time I was constantly using in my photography. But then I realized, strictly by following the rules becomes predictable. When everyone follows the same compositional guidelines, everyone ends up with similar photos. So I started exploring how I could break free from the rules and create something unique. For example, I realized that I don't have to hold my camera the usual way, horizontal or vertical at eye level. I started experimenting with hip or waist level shots, or even going down to dog's eye view, merging with the ground. Each angle gave a unique perspective to my photography. Through it all, I learned that in street photography you shouldn't overthink your composition. If it catches your eye, frame it and just shoot it. And finally, the most important and the most impactful mistake I used to make was my attitude as a photographer. I used to compare myself to others constantly, scrolling through endless streams of nice photos on Instagram. Images that look perfect, but after a while, looking at them again and again and again, they start blending together because they are all following the same trends. Anyone can take a nice photo, but not everyone can take a photo in their own unique style. I realized that I want my photos to feel like me, not just trendy compositions on social media. So I stopped worrying about whether every shot I took was a keeper or whether every scene I shot was even worth capturing. Instead, I made it a habit to always have my camera on me, shooting whatever speaks to me, even if it's just a small moment in my day. Rather than documenting the entire world around me, I started documenting my own life, understanding that my unique experiences are my advantage. They shape my perspective. And I stopped obsessing over learning every technique under the sun, realizing that the one and only habit that really improves photography is simply doing more of it. Each shot, each moment captured is another step towards finding my own voice in my own work. I would be very interested to read the lessons you have learned by doing photography, how they have shaped the way you do photography and the way you are as a photographer down in the comments. If you like the video, hit the like button down below, consider subscribing to the channel with a bell, and if you want to learn how I take night photos, click and watch this video next. That was all for today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I will see you on the streets. Bye bye.